Welcome back. I have had a bunch of people asking me how to do a cross stitch, but specifically with a turned edge. So today I'm going to show you exactly how I do that, and I'm going to include a little secret method inside that's going to turn your turned edge cross stitch from lasting a couple of years to lasting a really long time. So let's dive straight in and get started. Okay, so as I'm wrapping a handle that was already wrapped before, the first thing I need to do is cut that off. If you're wrapping a handle that wasn't wrapped before, you can skip this step entirely, but this will give me the pattern that I need. So if you are wrapping a handle for the first time, you want the diameter, you want the circumference of the handle plus 40 millimeters, and the reason for this is because we're going to do a 10mm fold, and that needs 20mm of leather. I've then bell skived it down. You can do this by hand, but a bell skiver for me was faster when I was filming this. So a bell skive down to nearly 0. It's about 0.2mm, but it's nearly 0. We're then going to use our ruler to mark out 20mm. As you can see, that's 20mm on each side. And we're going to use some masking tape to mark that. And this masking tape will come in handy for two reasons. One, for the glue line, and two, for the fold line. So we're going to leave that tape on for the whole time, plus the little secret that you're going to see in a minute. So we're going to use some water-based adhesive, and it's EcoSar 16PIU, because I know you guys will all ask about it. And a really important step is we're going to glue the whole thing, and then because one of my pieces of tape came off, I need to put that back on. But then we're going to use the tape line as a ruler, basically, for some non-stretch tape. Now this is a 10mm wide tape, a 1cm wide tape, so it's perfect for the entire width. But we're going to leave just a tiny little bit, so like 2mm of leather on each end. That's for two reasons. One, so you don't see the non-stretch tape, and two, so that if you wanted to finish the end, I'm not doing that in this video because I'm just showing you how to do a turned edge, a folded edge with tape. But if you wanted to, you can't really finish leather that you can see tape on because it'll ruin it. But when you're covering it over again, because obviously glue won't stick to somewhere that doesn't have glue, because glue sticks to itself, you need to cover that tape over with the glue. So here you can see me doing that now. And then you need to make sure that the glue sets entirely. Now, because non-stretch tape is not absorbent, you'll need to wait a little bit longer for that glue to set over the tape. We're going to use a bone folder to make that fold line. You can do this without this step if you don't have a bone folder, but I would highly recommend including this step because it makes that fold line so much crisper and so much easier to do. You don't want to push one bit down and then run your finger along it, because you'll get a wave and it won't be even. So you want to do it in sections, a couple of mil at a time, and then you'll have this little bulgy bit at the end that you just need to work in, because there will be a little bit of stretch. This is a 2mm veg tan leather that I'm using, but it really doesn't matter what you use. I've split it down to 1.2 just because I don't like really thick leather, but it's a 1.2 now mil thick veg tan. I don't know which tannery it's from, it's just the one I had on hand. The next thing we're going to do is tap those ends down just to make sure that the glue is really nice and set. Normally my stitch line is 3mm from the edge, but because I want it to really bite into that tape well, I'm doing this at 5mm, and it just gives it a little bit of extra leather as well to grab into, so you don't get any tearing. If you have a round pricking iron, I would recommend using that. I use a French style for everything, but if you have a round pricking iron, I would use that, just because you get rid of a little bit of the extra stretchage. Is that a word? It is now. You get rid of a little bit of the extra stretchage. I'm using a 20 tooth Pro Italia Plus pricking iron because I also know that you guys will ask that. But aside from that, that's all you need. And thread, obviously, which is a 0.55mm M50 Misi thread. Now, normally I would use an M40 for everything, but because I want a little bit of extra strength on the leather and a little bit of less chance of pulling through that leather, I'm using something slightly thicker. That was a really important decision to make. Once you've put the first loop in on the top hole, and that's all the way through, over, and all the way through again, you need to decide which side you're going to put over which side. I'm doing the far over the close or the right over the left. It doesn't matter as long as you do the same thing all the way down. You're going to pick the hole below and opposite. So this is the standard cross stitch method. It's the below and opposite where the thread is coming out. It can be a little bit difficult to find the hole. That's what she said. It can be a little bit difficult to find the hole. However, it is easy enough once you've had a little bit of practice. Now, the amount of innuendos I just made is ridiculous, but you get the point. It's also very important, as you'll see in a minute, because I let myself loose a little bit on this, but it's really important to pull those threads as tight as you can every time, because there's no, unlike in a saddle stitch where there's a cast which locks the thread in, this has no cast, so it's very easy for those threads to loosen. So it's down and across, but you're not going in the first hole out and then in the second hole. You're going down the first hole that is below and opposite, and you're going straight across under into the opposite one, and that gives you that really nice cross on the top. Now, I'm not going to go through every single hole because you can watch it as you like, but basically that's what you're doing the whole way down. But make sure you pull those threads tight after every single one, because as you'll see at the end, mine was just a tiny little bit looser than I'd like it to be. But this is a really good example of why you want that 5mm stitch line instead of a 3mm stitch line, because if you have a 3mm stitch line, you'll get a little bit, there won't be quite enough leather by the edge for it to get a really good tight pull. And then you just want to repeat that all the way down. You can use this method for literally any length of leather. As long as you have enough thread, you can stitch all the way down using this. I think car steering wheels actually use this stitch method. I'm not too sure on that, but I think car steering wheels use this exact same stitching method. Don't quote me on that. If you want to pick yourself up some Missy thread, or any lovely other leathers, there are links in the video description. They're from Leatherbox. They do not sponsor this video, but it helps the channel out a little bit if you go and buy from those links in the description box below. But otherwise, we're coming to the end now, so I skipped ahead a little bit because obviously you don't need to watch the same thing for 8 million years. Thought it was really important to show you this is because I know I'll get people asking me, how do you terminate the thread on this? How do you end it? How do you finish your run of stitches? And you're about to see. So you do normal cross stitch down to the very last hole, which you're seeing if you watch this far. It's really important that you do, because when you get to the end, you have to be able to get to the end. So that's why I've included it, obviously. If you have got this far, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, because it does help the channel out more than you possibly know. But you want to cross stitch to the last hole, and then once you've got to the last hole and you've done both sides of the cross stitch, because obviously you don't want to have a wonky finish, a wonky end, you need to go over once or twice depending on how many loops you want. They do not make it, well, they might make it more secure. I haven't done a scientific analysis of it, but what I can tell you is that from my personal experience, one loop is absolutely fine. So you can see me struggling to find the hole there a little bit as well. But you want to cross stitch all the way to the final bit, and then you want to do one loop, but you don't come up the other hole. You go over and then out the end, basically, pulling it nice and tight when you do so. If I was to do this again, I would probably have a little bit more thread. Obviously, for a normal saddle stitch, you want 3 to 4 times the length. For this, I didn't count how long it was, but I would have a little bit more, just so that it's a bit easier to tie the knot. And I would probably not snip the needles off, because it might have made it slightly easier on myself. But basically, you want to tie a little knot in the end. In fact, I think I did 3 from memory, or 2. But anyway, you want to do 2 or 3, using the space between the wrap to pull that knot nice and tight. And then if you can slide your knife down that gap, or your scissors down that gap, you can get those ends really nicely finished underneath there. And then what I would personally recommend is you get a needle or an awl and line those X's up over the gaps, just so that it looks really, really clean. You can then tap them down afterwards just to secure them in place. But get a needle, go over the whole thing, get it really looking pretty, and you're all done. You have done a cross stitch, but with a non-stretch turned edge. It's magical. You can do this for anything. I think I've covered most of the handles in my kitchen with this. It's brilliant. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I want to know exactly what you guys want to learn, so I know what videos to make. So I'll see you soon. Have a phenomenal week. Take care.